Greetings. This is Peggy Miller, Highland Winds LLC, medical herbalist, in part 5 of the overview of the podcast series Medical Herbalism, which deals with both Chinese and Ayurvedic herbalism predominantly. Some of it is just plain Western herbs and or any herbs, and how effectively you can use them even individually. But in Chinese and Ayurvedic herbalism, formulas are often the case. When you combine different plants, different botanicals, in this series called Herbs, not always herbs, you basically get a far more powerful punch than with individual herbs. And so over the millenniums, both the Chinese and the Ayurvedic are renowned for their study of both the individual herbs and then how to use them in the body, plus an understanding of the body's physical mechanisms, which they look on in a broader context than we tend to in Western medicine. So in this overview, and each one is 15 minutes long, this is part 5 of the overview. There was an intro. This looks like it's going to be 8 parts, the overview. And then there'll be individual segments, which break down all the things I've talked about here. And last, in part 4, I went into, in a little bit of depth, not much depth, this is an overview. I went into yin deficiency and yin excess and yang deficiency and yang excess, and what the implications are on the physical system of the body when you have one or the other. And I talked a little bit about what contributes to the buildup of one of those things. Balance, as always, is the key, and keeping that in mind in terms of herbal health. A medical herbalist tries to help the body regain balance. Regain balance of yin and yang, regain balance of tridosha, but balance. And so what I was basically talking about, I got to dampness, and dampness I'll touch on a little bit later, probably in part 6 of this overview. But today what I wanted to talk about is more information on yin and yang from the standpoint, and the reason it's critical, and the trouble with overviews is you want to kind of really talk about one point, and that's not the what I'm trying to achieve with the overview. So I will go into these things in more depth with the individual segments. But it's really critical to have a somewhat of a grasp and an acceptance of this yin-yang or tridosha balance. And one of the other things I kind of wanted to point out is in Chinese herbalism, they actually divide the physical system into yin organs and yang organs. It helps them figure out what's going wrong when there is a situation of imbalance. Yin organs are the heart, spleen, lungs, kidney, liver, and pericardium, which really helps protect the heart. Yang organs, on the alternative, are what are often called the hollow organs, and there's the small intestine, triple warmer stomach, large intestine, gallbladder, and bladder. Now, each of these has sort of an amazing symbiotic relationship to each other. For example, the heart, it needs a proper balance of yin. And right now I'm reading a quote from Diagnosis and Treatment, Chinese Traditional Herbal Medicine, Volume 1. The heart needs a proper balance of yin, blood and fluids, and yang, neurological impulse, to function correctly. The yang function of the heart refers to the impulse, arterial and venous pressure, while the yin function is related to the quality and amount of blood present. One thing remember is that in yang is external. It's the skin, it's the upper body, it's the posterior lateral, it's the back, functional, transportive key, defensive key, and yin is internal, lower body, anterior medial, front, structural, transformative, blood, body fluids, nutritional key. Now, that balance between the organs, between what the organ itself does as a contributing factor to the body, such as the spleen. It helps to digest food. It helps that food to move through the system. The spleen is a yin organ. A yang organ, it's receptive. It receives the food and then functions. The yang organ helps to move that, and through a balance of qi and food, we contribute to that. Now, the other organs, for example, the lungs, they need to maintain a balance of yin and yang. Yin and this with lungs, and right now, I'm not sure when you'll listen to this, and hopefully at times when you listen in the future to this, COVID will be a thing of the past. But it's not right now. It's a virus that is a pandemic, and we're still grappling with it. And one of the primary areas of the body that it impacts is the lungs. And the lungs, if they get too dry, as I've looked at COVID, basically the little tiny prongs that go out when you've seen the pictures, if you have, of a COVID virus, there's like these little pins stuck in it. The proteins, the exterior of a tiny virus, those little pins can get stuck. If it's dry, if you're very dry, if your throat's dry, if your esophagus is dry, if your lungs are dry, it actually helps to catch viruses, not just COVID, any virus. Things get stuck when they face too much dryness in the nose, throat, lungs. They get stuck. Now, dryness creates both in the lungs, means that you don't have enough yin, moisture, and you probably have too much yang in your overall metabolism. If you're a very yang person, it contributes to dryness. And so it's really important to help with immunity, to help shake off incoming viruses of any type, to have a better balance, to have moisture in your lungs. Not mucus, moisture. And the moisture comes from when the spleen digests food, it then it separates that into two types, and it transfers what's called moisture, yin, upwards to the lungs, to the heart area. And this is very important. And if you have too much yang and it's dry, that could mean a number of things. It could mean that your spleen is not working correctly to transfer enough moisture to the lungs. It can also mean, or in addition mean, that you just plain don't have enough lung yin because the qi itself is not moving, the energy is not moving moisture through the system. There are herbs that help with that. There are herbs that can increase the yin of the lungs, and herbs in case you have a yang problem, yang deficiency, or qi energy deficiency. And energy deficiency can some of the herbs that can impact an energy deficiency for the lungs are like ginseng or codonopsis and astragalus. Astragalus is very good with codonopsis in this case because astragalus is a more uplifting. It heads up in the body, so it drags the codonopsis action closer to the lungs. And sometimes, so that's to increase ki. To increase yin, there are herbs like glenia, ophiopogon. There are a number of herbs that are yin increasing, and often what will be a good formula in this case, and I talk a little bit more about this because we do have COVID around right now. There are mushrooms also. One comes to mind, cordyceps, cordyceps. That is a very good lung yin herb. It, in fact, if you research it, if you Google that, you will find scientific documents. They've been studying it because of pulmonary, the impacts in the lungs can be more than just dryness. People suffer COPD for many different reasons, and cordyceps is one of the very good herbs that it's a mushroom, and you can buy it online and add it if you have lung issues like COPD. Taking a little bit, 3 or 4 times a week. By a little bit, I mean like half a teaspoon of the powder in a tea, and drink it during the day in a quart of tea. But glenia is another, ophiopogon is another. I often add things like schizandra, which is a fascinating, it's a little tiny berry-like, and it not only helps the heart and helps hypertension, but it also works with other herbs to moisten the lungs in the way you need them moist. So basically, if you're overly yang, that can lead to dryness. Then your whole system gets drier and your lungs are dry. Or if you're ki deficient, or if the spleen isn't working correctly. And so one has to determine what's the cause of the dryness, but at the same time, you also just start taking herbs for the dryness. So a formula will help to balance by doing a couple things at the same time. It will increase the yin, or if it's overly yin and you're starting to develop, if moisture accumulates too heavily, then you can get a situation where that moisture can ultimately shift to mucus, and the mucus shifts to phlegm, and you have phlegm deposits, and you have to deal with that. And being yang deficient can contribute to that. It's not burning up the moisture enough. So balance is critical in this, and knowing the different yin and yang organs, what their jobs are, all help to understand what might be happening in your body. So if you think I've got a dry throat, that's important. That alone is important. And there are herbs to help with that. Start with marshmallow, M-A-L-L-O-W, marshmallow. It's great for increasing moisture. It's an anti-inflammatory, helps clear the liver, helps the kidneys, helps the intestines. Marshmallow is great. You can take it 3 or 4 times a week in a tea. So this kind of balance continues to be something that needs to be understood. And I hope that going into this in some way, the yin and yang organs, their relationship, has helped you to gain a sense, a more in-depth sense, or I've lost you forever. It's like, oh my God, this just continuing and continuing. But it does. And understanding the balance, I go back and refresh sometimes. So this is the end of this 15-minute segment. I'll be discussing another one in part 6. I hope you have a great day. It's Highland Winds LLC, My email, highlandwinds@gmail.com. Peggy Miller, signing off. You take care and think balance, okay? All right, bye.